Would you like to introduce yourself to the people who haven't yet met you yet?
Sure. My name is Robert Montenegro. I live in Tacoma, Washington. Tacoma is about 50 kilometers south of Seattle, Washington in the States. I work in the office for a nonprofit organization that is education-based here in the state of Washington. I am 31 years old. This is Lulu. She's 10 years old. She is my assistant.
Okay, great. So what does your everyday life look like now?
Well, we're all, both my wife and I work from home. So we've set up home offices in our living room and here in our dining room. So we've managed to fairly seamlessly transition. I'm going to put my friend down. There we go. We've been able to transition fairly seamlessly. We both have jobs where we can do things over video conference. We don't need to leave the house, so we try and avoid leaving the house as much as possible. It's basically wake up, go to work in my pajamas, and then answer emails, do video conferences. We try and go outside and get some fresh air as much as possible. There hasn't been much sunshine recently. This is kind of what you get for living in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. There's not going to be much sunshine. But getting fresh air is important. So we're trying to do that as much as possible and set up a routine for our lives, because as long as you have some sort of routine, you could maintain normalcy, which is the only thing you could really hope for when things are as abnormal as they are now.
Yeah, so are you struggling with stuff like shopping or something like that?
We're very fortunate that we have both a car and a fairly major grocery store within about a mile, a few kilometers here. So it hasn't been difficult to get things. We saw that the writing was on the wall pretty early about what was going to happen here, and anticipated a shutdown, and prepared adequately. We didn't hoard. I don't have 20 rolls of toilet paper hiding or anything like that, but but we did make sure that we were prepared so that we didn't get caught without any of the essential supplies. But we're trying to reduce the amount of times we go out. But I've gone to the grocery store within the last week. There hasn't been too much in the way of shortages. You'll see it in the news that you can't get toilet paper and that flour and rice are sold out, and that is true. But for the most part, I was able to get everything, my shopping lists, produce, things like that. Wasn't difficult at all.
Okay, great. So you said you saw the writing on the wall pretty early. How did the American government react?
Well, we're finding, yes, you should smirk because there's a few different answers to that question. We're finding that on the local level and on the state level as well. The response here in Washington has been pretty good. Washington State was one of the first areas in our country that had multiple cases. There was an elderly folks nursing home in a suburb of Seattle where many of the first major cases were located, and then it spread from there. And it was mostly something that was here on the West Coast before it spread to the rest of the country. And I'm very happy with our governor. His name is Jay Inslee, and our governor's done very well about containing things, about being very level-headed and rational, and believing scientists and leaning on his experts, and imposing restrictions on movement and gatherings and canceling major events. He did that very early, before most of the rest of the nation. And we're finding that the curves, as they are, have flattened more here in this state than in other states around the country. So we're pretty, it's not great. There's still people dying. There's still people getting sick, and a lot of people's lives are affected. But I find that regionally we're doing well. On the national scale, perhaps the less said, the better in many ways. But I would count myself as one of the people who's disappointed and unsatisfied with the way things have gone on the national scale. Not just the president, who I think has bungled this pretty badly, but also our Congress has been useless.
Okay. So what restrictions do you face right now, like exactly? So are you allowed to go outside?
We are allowed to go outside. We're under a stay-at-home order. So anybody who is a non-essential worker is asked to stay at home as much as possible. The only thing they want us to go out for is to get groceries for essential trips, such as to the doctor. We've been out to the veterinarian a few times for Lulu, our dog, who's got regular appointments. She leads a more active social life than we do at this point. But we're allowed to go outside for exercise as well. We can walk around the block. If we wanted to, we could drive to a park. And as long as we stayed away from folks, we wouldn't be cited or anything like that. I know they're in some parts of the world, in some parts of Europe, that they're much more strict about that. And here it's not so much. If I wanted to walk outside and just keep going and do whatever I want, I could do that if I wanted to. But we're doing our best to try and minimize that sort of thing.
Yeah, so that's very similar to what we're doing in Bavaria, actually, because like the rest of Germany doesn't do that much, but Bavaria has like almost the same kind of restrictions. And how's your social life right now? Like, do you feel there's more of a solidarity, or rather people just thinking of themselves and hoarding stuff?
Well, I find that, on the topic of hoarding, there's always going to be some folks who are just a bit out there and panic, or are very selfish and do things like hoard medicine, hoard supplies, and leave little for everybody else. And I find that there's just not much you can do to prevent that. But as far as folks that I know, I found that this has made me more thoughtful about being in contact with my family and my friends. I should note that while Anna, my wife, and I live here, I should note that I'm making this like a very, I'm saying things like my wife, Anna. I know that you know my wife is Anna, but I want to make sure that the interview is used. Okay, I just wanted to make that segue. But we're living here in this part of the country, but her family all lives in Alaska. My family all lives in California. We have very little family here. We have friends here, and we've been able to keep in contact with them through text and things like that. But we're seeing our family about as much as we were before. But I'm more thoughtful about getting in contact with them, about checking in on them, about making sure that they're taking it seriously, which I'm really grateful they all are. I've got a lot of elderly family members who are hunkering down and not leaving, and the younger members of the family are making sure that the folks who are immunocompromised are taken care of, and they don't have to go out to the market or anything like that. I hope that answers the question. Does that cover basically what you want to hear?
Yeah, it did, but like also on a larger scale, are there any like networks of people trying to be like show solidarity with each other, or?
Oh yes, there's been a lot of thought put into, and there's many campaigns in the local area here in Tacoma for supporting small businesses, supporting our restaurants here, because the government has shut those places down except for carry out and delivery for food. And there's a really lovely network and really lovely community of small businesses and small locally owned restaurants that are really struggling, that don't have the surplus of capital to weather a storm like this. And there's been a very passionate movement of folks who are encouraging people to support those businesses even during this time. And we've ordered from a few of our favorite restaurants locally and tried to make sure that we do our part to help them out, because if this lasts as long as it may last, what this community looks like on the other side could be very different. So it's been very important to try and support those folks. And then in general, as far as our neighborhood is concerned, we've we've reached out. We're the youngest folks in our neighborhood, and we've reached out to folks and say, hey, if you need anything, if you don't feel comfortable going out, we're happy to go to the market for you, or something of that sort. So I found that community-wise, especially in our neighborhood here, people have been very friendly. People are remaining positive and are more than happy to help if needed. There's not been very many people that are, go away, leave me alone. Not much of that.
That's very nice to hear. So you already talked about like the society after this. Do you think anything will be different as soon as this crisis is over?
I think everything will be different. I don't know how it could possibly be. I don't think how we could latch on to what things were like before all of us experienced this. Not just, this business was open before and now it's no longer in business. Those sorts of changes, economical and the ways that our communities looks and the ways that our communities look and the folks that thrive business wise, but emotionally, it's. I remember older relatives that had lived through major events, wars and depressions, and those things influence their lives for the rest of their lives and influence the way that they made decisions. And especially, I think we're not even to the really scary part of what this crisis will look like, as far as, the deaths of people and people getting sick and the hospitals being overwhelmed. And I can only imagine what things will look like on the other side of that when our hospitals are overwhelmed. We have a friend who, she's on maternity leave right now, but her regular job is to work as a nurse in an intensive care unit in a local hospital. And we're extremely frightened because, she's going to have to go back to work at some point. And she's going to be thrust right into the front lines of this and risk bringing that home for her husband and her child. And that's incredibly scary. So many people are having to act in ways that were not expected of them before. And that can only change people. So we'll see. I think that there's going to be some positives, just like, going through difficult circumstances makes people stronger. But I think as well, economically and socially, there will be many difficulties looking forward.
Yeah. So what do you think how long this will take, like for you, until it goes back to normal? So not globally, but just until you can go back to a somewhat normal life?
I wish I could answer that. I suppose there's so many variables, so many factors involved, whether our so-called flattening the curve, whether all our self-quarantines, actually makes a major difference. I imagine it'll be months. It'll be summer sounds like a great opportunity to, I'd like to go out and be able to be social during the summer, but I wouldn't be surprised if we're not seeing life go back to normal before July. Yeah, I'd like for it to, maybe we run into the miracle cure, or, we find a way to contain this better than we're doing now, but I'm not tremendously confident in that at the moment. So I'm prepared mentally to call the next 2-3 months a unique situation, a unique part of my life and all our lives, and just get ready for it.
Yeah, that's kind of a sad perspective, but I think it's still very realistic. So thank you very much for sharing like your perspective on things and your situation right now.